SketchyGOichie.
All right, here we are. We're back. SketchyGOichie. I'm your host, Roger Andrews, illustrator, character creator, designer, all that good stuff. I wanted to share with you guys a little Iron Man piece I did very recently, as in like, I don't know, yesterday, day before. And of course, with massive Avengers Endgame, I had to do a little Avenger character. Decided to color it for you as well. So, getting right into it. Of course, you can see me scratching through this pose. Ideally, I'd like to, kind of just get the rough shapes in. I decided to do this oversized sort of cannon thing. I guess if you watched Infinity War, you can see Tony's updated his tech to kind of be this sort of little nanobots that can form pretty much, looks like just about anything he wants, which is an interesting, I didn't read the comic book, so I'm assuming that's part of the comic books as well, so it's not that shocking for anyone who is a comic book lover. But so I chose to do that, kind of adjusted his feet, adjusted the little blast coming out of his feet just to kind of make it flow a little better. You'll see when I get to the coloring stages, I think I'm able to sort of use the reds and the yellows and the sort of the blue of the energy to kind of create a nice little triad shape. It's not really evident here, certainly not in the inking stage. And as far as inking goes, technique-wise, I love the thick and thin line. Oftentimes, however, I will start with the thin line, just kind of almost like a mono line all the way around, and then go back in and add the thicks. I think it's maybe a way for me to kind of choose my light source kind of after the fact, once I've kind of got the see actually you can see it there. I'm kind of putting in some darker lines to kind of just under sort of like this chest plate there, and under his arm, and under where his jaw meets his chest, just to kind of give a little depth. So I like having that thick and thin line, but sometimes I'll select a brush, just a bit thicker brush, and I will render it just be a little more delicate for the thinner lines, and just press down a little bit harder for the thicker lines. And it kind of mimics, I think, what traditional comic book inkers would do, the ones who would bring to do most of their inking with a brush. I think it's a lot faster when you don't have to go back in and add in the thicker lines, if you can kind of do it on the fly, if you have the confidence to kind of go in and just let it rip. As you can see, I'm kind of moving on to this cannon thing, this energy blasting thing that he's got, that Iron Man has. I don't know if you noticed, but I drew the top section and then duplicated it and then flipped it and basically created both sides of it so that they're symmetrical. I'd love to do that. I should mention I'm using Procreate, if you didn't know. If you watch any of my other videos, you know that I primarily work in Procreate now. However, I spent an entire lifetime of drawing on paper and, and other surfaces, so I feel like it kind of helps when you have that basis. Okay, moving into the flatting. Obviously it's almost like a coloring book at this point. I just add another layer underneath the line art and just draw within the lines like a good art student should. And when I do, I just block in the shapes. I can always go back in and change them. They're on their own layer, so it's really easy to do. And then once I have all the shapes in, I'll just apply another layer on top, either using a alpha channel. I'll do an in-depth video kind of showing how to use alpha channels, or I'll use a clipping mask, or sometimes I'll just make a selection of, I'll draw a shape all the way around that sort of yellow you saw me do, and then I added the red on top. I'll draw that yellow shape all the way around fill it in, and then I'll add a layer on top for the shadowing, or other colors, you know, like I did with the yellow and the sort of that steel color on his arms and other little accent pieces. And then I'll do as I'm doing now, add a layer on top of that with either a clipping mask or an alpha channel, and I'll start applying the shadow. And in doing so, what it allows me to do is if I want to change the shadow color, which I will later on, or if I want to play around with the opacity of the shadow, as long as if you don't do that on the same layer as the flats, it kind of gives you a little more flexibility. Same thing when you want to add highlights. It's great. And then, of course, when you have that shape, that sort of yellow shape that I filled in, that sort of silhouettes all the way around and underneath the line art, I can always select it, open up a new layer, and then fill that selection, because it will stay within that yellow shape. It will not bleed. Whatever shading and coloring I add will not bleed beyond that yellow shape if you render within a selection. Again, I'll do another video and it'll kind of show that in depth, what I mean. Kind of do a live sort of Procreate video and you'll get a sense. But I just wanted to get this out there because the movie's coming out, and I think, I know I certainly want to look around the internet, and particularly on YouTube, and see who's doing some cool pieces, other artists are doing other fan art. Another thing I like to do also, just while we're speaking about layers in Procreate, when I get to the highlight layer, I like to, I like to add in, I'll do all the highlights in a single color, like I'm doing here with that lighter red. And I'll instead of taking it, I'll go in and I'll adjust the layer mode from normal to screen. Sometimes I'll duplicate the layer and do that. Why do I keep wanting to say layer? Later. But I mean layer. I'll go in, I'll duplicate that layer, change the setting from normal to screen, and it'll be really, really intense. That highlight will really, really like almost glow, and it'll be kind of semi-transparent as well. And then I'll take that screen layer and I'll just kind of reduce it a bit, and so I'll essentially have double the highlight layers. And by reduce it, I mean reduce the opacity of it. And what's fun about that is it's the flexibility. It's the ability to kind of give this sort of intense glow. And you can kind of see it in the energy there, that blue energy within that cannon, the sort of the crevice of that cannon. It's sort of the line, the bluish lines and the white lines. If you notice, they sort of kind of pass through and over top the line art. So I think it kind of makes a cool effect. And when I get to this stage, if anyone's seen any of my other videos, if I'm adding that sort of outer, sort of scratchy outline, I'm definitely at the end stages. And then a little bit of glow there is just on top of everything. It's actually on top of the line art too, so it kind of obscures it a bit. And then I'm monkeying around with doing a sort of a weird little sort of background underneath him. But in the end, I chose to just kind of like leave it raw. Character, gray background. I thought it was good enough. And you can see me struggling with how I want to do this sort of weird halftone dot background, and ultimately I just scrap it. So there you have it. Iron Man from the Avengers. Enjoy the flick. Enjoy my art. Please subscribe. SketchyGOichie. Live your moment. Happy sketching, y'all. Peace.